everyone, and welcome to Fair Housing and the COVID-19 Pandemic Panel Discussion. My name is Krista Danis, and I'm the Events and Program Coordinator at the Aurora Public Library District, and will be your moderator this evening. Thank you so much to our panelists and our co-sponsors at the Aurora Human Relations Commission for being here and making this event possible. And thank you to the audience for tuning in on Zoom and/or Facebook Live. So before I introduce our panelists and we dive into the discussion this evening, I'd like to introduce you to William Small Jr., the chair of the Aurora Human Relations Commission and our co-sponsor this evening, who will take a few moments to talk about the role of this important organization. The Human Relations Commission of the City of Aurora seeks to further our understanding within our community and to preserve recognized rights of residents of the city and those who interact within our community, particularly in the areas of equal employment, housing, and access to public services and facilities. Hi, William.
Hi, Krista. How are you?
Good. You?
I am doing well, thank you. And I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for assisting us with this. For those that may not know me, and I'm sure most of you do not, as Krista mentioned, I'm the newly appointed chair of the Aurora Human Relations Commission. And just want to say thank you to everyone sharing this evening with us. There's a lot going on right now, and we think this is something very important to the community. And we just want to contribute and do our part. I think she went into great detail with regards to what the HRC is involved with and what it is our desire to attempt to do at least. And that's really to deter discrimination of any type within the Aurora community for our residents and for our business owners as well. And when someone feels that they have been discriminated based on sexual orientation, age, race, religion, military status, physical disabilities, what have you, we want to be a resource. But I think what's really even more important right now, especially when what's taking place during COVID, is really important to us to not just sit back and wait until things go wrong and a complaint is filed. We feel now our new direction per se is to really get actively, progressively involved with the community and to be a resource to try to bring the tools and resources to the business leaders, to the members, the residents of the community, and just let them know that we're there to be a catalyst to provide insight to what may be taking place with regards to COVID, what may be taking place just in different areas where we can try to be a bridge before there is a problem versus waiting for something to happen. So we actually were beneficial to partner with the Aurora Public Library in putting together this speaker series. I want to thank you again, Krista, for supporting us in this effort. And again, just say thank you to everyone for participating. And we look forward to any questions you might have near the end.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, William. I will be kicking off our event today with an introduction to our esteemed panel of experts and community leaders, who will then each have an opportunity to speak independently to the topic of fair housing, followed by a short Q&A with questions from the audience. Attendees can submit their questions directly on Zoom via the Q&A function or in the Facebook Live comments for this event. We will do our best to answer all of them tonight. So please note this presentation will be recorded and made available on library channels for future viewing. So Ralph Jordan is the executive director of the Aurora Housing Authority, which was founded in the 1940s and charged with the mission of providing safe and decent and affordable housing for the people of the city of Aurora. With funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the AHA provides housing for nearly 2,000 households through the Low-Income Public Housing Program, the Project-Based Voucher Program, and Housing Choice Voucher Program. Through partnerships with local and regional nonprofits, the AHA also promotes educational achievement and self-sufficiency. The Aurora Housing Authority, through its business activities, provides nearly $17.2 million annually to local contractors, landlords, business owners, and helps to support businesses owned and operated by people of color nationwide. Welcome, Ralph.
Well, thank you.
Hi.
Hello to everybody.
All right.
So I want to give a little bit about myself, and then I will dig into the Aurora Housing Authority and what we're doing now and how the
No, Ralph, I think I'm going to introduce all the panelists and then I'll bring you up again, okay? But stay here. Thank you. Okay, so our next panelist is Colleen Baraka, Clinical Associate Professor at the Northern Illinois University College of Law and Director of the NIU Health Advocacy Clinic. As a public law school with a tradition of public service, the NIU College of Law encourages students to aspire to become ethical leaders in the legal profession and to maintain a deep concern for social justice. To promote these goals while students are at the college, NIU provides a variety of practical opportunities for students to serve their communities through clinical and extracurricular opportunities for professional development. One of the clinics, the NIU Health Advocacy Clinic, is located here in Aurora at Hesed House. You'll hear more about another clinic, the NIU COVID-19 Legal Response Clinic, tonight. Both offer students practical experience while helping those in need. Prior to joining the NIU College of Law, Professor Baraka was a supervising attorney at the AIDS Legal Council of Chicago. She served as a Cook County Assistant State's Attorney for 7 years in both the Child Support Enforcement Division and the Seniors and Persons with Disabilities Unit. And it's so great to have you here, Colleen.
Sorry, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. And panelist Neil McMenamin is the Associate Director and Division Director of Programs at Hesed House, which is a homeless shelter and comprehensive homeless resource center here in Aurora. Hesed House's mission statement is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, and give people the chance to hope again. Hesed House is a national model for ending homelessness, one person, one family at a time. Hesed House operates on the core value that everyone deserves dignity. Hi, Neil, and thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Great. And finally, panelist Rick Guzman is the Executive Director of the Neighbor Project here in Aurora, which is a nonprofit HUD-certified housing counseling agency dedicated to helping low to moderate income families escape debt, build credit, save money, and ultimately buy their first homes. The goal is to help our neighbors prosper so the neighborhoods can prosper as well. The Neighbor Project's mission statement is activating the potential of working families to revitalize their neighborhoods through savings, education, and home ownership. Welcome, Rick.
Good evening. Thanks.
Great. So thank you everyone for being here. Let's finally get started. First, we'll hear from Ralph Jordan, then move on to Colleen Baraka, followed by Neil McMenamin, and closing with Rick Guzman. Take it away, Ralph.
Okay, I'm sorry, but good evening, everybody. My name is Ralph Jordan, and I'm the Executive Director of the Aurora Housing Authority. I've been in this position since July 2nd, 2018. And just to give you a little history about myself, I've worked for and managed public housing programs since 1989 and started with the Chicago Housing Authority. I've managed some of the most notorious sites in the country during the 90s. Sites called Stateway Gardens, Robert Taylor Homes, and Henry Horner's, just to name a few. I was also part of the agency sweep team, which inspected and rated some of the worst buildings and properties during the early 90s. I was also a part of the transition team that privatized the agency during the year of 2000. In May of 2000, I was offered a new position as Vice President of Real Estate Management with the Woodlawn Community Development Corporation, which I accepted and managed the day-to-day operations for that organization, which managed over 9,000 units of housing in the Woodlawn and Chicago Housing Authority areas. I left that agency and moved to Cleveland and worked for the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, where I managed 10,500 public housing units and about 15,000 housing choice vouchers. I stayed in Cleveland since 2016 and left and went to Indianapolis, to the Indianapolis Housing Agency, and became their Chief Operating Officer for 2 years. I managed 2,500 units of public housing and administered over 8,000 housing choice vouchers. So the Aurora Housing Authority, just to give you some history, as you mentioned earlier, has served the city of Aurora since 1949 as a land clearance commission when it was first chartered by the state of Illinois. Subsequently, in 1987, the name of the Aurora Land Clearance Commission changed to the Aurora Housing Authority to portray the purpose of the agency more accurately. The city of Aurora appointed the first 5 members to the Board of Commissioners for the agencies in the late 60s, which is when construction began on the first public housing units in Aurora. Currently, the Aurora Housing Authority operates under the direction of 7 Board of Commissioners, and the board members are appointed by the mayor of the city of Aurora. 6 traditional public housing communities were developed in the early 1970s in various locations on what was at the time the outskirts of the city. In the 1980s, the AHA developed scattered site housing throughout the city and began administration of the Section 8 Housing Assistance Program. The Aurora Housing Authority is a non-taxing municipality It depends on the rents collected from the authority-owned units. HUD provided administrative and service fees, grants, and federal subsidies to fund its programs and operations. The Rural Housing Authority's portfolio is made up of 5 public housing sites that are comprised of 500 units of housing. And additionally, the agency administers 1,428 housing choice vouchers. So just to kind of give you all an understanding of how the pandemic has affected the agency. It has affected us in a lot of ways. We've had to close our offices down and not see our residents face to face. We have been only able to complete emergency work orders and not routine work orders due to the pandemic. Staff has had to work remotely, and we did that from when the pandemic started in March up until July 6th. And we actually came back to work, but we didn't see our residents face to face. Within the last 2 weeks, one of our staff members did have tested positive for the pandemic. And so we had to close our office back down and have all of our staff members tested within the last 2 weeks, which was a good thing because nobody tested positive. Some of the things that we've done for our to assist our residents, we've provided masks and hand sanitizers to our residents at our sites on 2 occasions. We've also provided COVID-19 testing at 2 of our largest sites, Centennial House, which has 127 units, and Maple Terrace, which has 188 units. We had over 132 people tested during that process. We've also, some of the other things that we've been doing this process, we've also partnered with the City of Aurora, Top Box, the American Diabetes Association, and Blue Cross Blue Shield to provide 1,000 boxes of fresh vegetables and chicken breasts to our residents. We're currently in the process of providing 300 turkeys and 300 boxes of fresh vegetables to our residents for Thanksgiving. We also create partnerships with organizations such as Wabanzi College and the Business and Career Services to provide educational and job programs for our residents. At the same time, since we've had that issue with school, we've partnered with At-Risk Mentoring and African American Men of Unity to assist our residents, the students, with e-learning program at our community centers from Monday through Friday, 8 to 12 every day. Also, so that's kind of what we've been doing to help our residents. Back to when I first started here at the Rural Housing Authority, the agency was in a trouble status with HUD. We had a lot of issues that we had to take care of, and within an 8-month period, we fixed all of those issues, and HUD deemed us as a high-performing agency. I got here July 2nd, 2018. November 2019, HUD deemed us as a high-performing agency. And so that's pretty much the progress that we've made. Now we're working on modernization and development plans for our entire portfolio. We're doing upgraded roofs at Maple Terrace. We've done that this year. We've also did 5 new mod units that are our model units for the upgrade that we're going to do to our resident units at a few of our family sites. And we're looking at all development opportunities for our agency beginning in 2021 to upgrade our portfolio and to assist our residents. One of the other things that we're working on is the Housing Authority's Section 8 wait list, or what we call the Housing Choice Voucher Program, has been closed here in Aurora since 2007. We would have had it open in the spring of 2020, but the pandemic affected us where we couldn't open up the wait list, because we actually were going to create a partnership with the Aurora Public Library so that people can come in and apply for the Housing Choice Voucher Program online. But due to the pandemic, we had to step back a little bit. So our goal now is to have that wait list opened in mid-January, which will assist us in providing over 200 more affordable housing opportunities for our residents or the people of Aurora. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ralph, for sharing that. So next, I'm going to welcome Colleen Baraka. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. In traditional format for being a teacher, I've learned how to teach online here. I'm gonna share a couple slides with you guys to tie some of the issues that we've seen. So as Chris mentioned, I work for NIU College of Law, and NIU has multiple legal clinics where students can come and represent clients under the supervision of a licensed attorney. It's, I say it's kind of similar to being a student teacher when you're training to be a teacher. And so I actually am very happy to be here because I spend a lot of time in Aurora typically, because the clinic that I usually direct is called the NIU Health Advocacy Clinic, and it's located on site at Hesed House. So Hesed is a place that I've come to love over the last 7 years. And Aurora is very special to me. I'm very happy to be here. So this is a picture from March 10th, 2020. Some of my students, since our clinic opened in 7 years ago, we've had 85 students spend time there. And this was a Tuesday, and things were pretty normal. I mean, we were meeting with some clients about a disability case, and students were getting ready, and we were working on cases. And we left that day thinking that things were going to be okay. But as you can imagine, by the 24 hours later, the NBA had suspended its season because of COVID. The March Madness was canceled, and NIU announced that all of its education for the rest of the semester was going to be online. So we tried to figure out, there are other clinics that NIU has in Rockford, there are 2 other clinicians, and we sat down trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Like we want to make sure our students have a good experience, but most importantly, we want to make sure that we're helping people. So we set out to kind of figure out a way that we could work with students completely virtually and yet still help people facing problems and challenges because of the pandemic. So we launched the NIU COVID-19 Legal Response Clinic. So basically what that is we advise people on a variety of topics, people who have been impacted, had legal challenges during the pandemic. Public benefits, which is a big one, kind of my specialty with Medicaid, SNAP, Social Security, unemployment benefits and employment issues, orders of protection in family law, wills and powers of attorney, and expungement and criminal record sealings, and evictions. And so what's a little different about our clinic is we don't directly represent clients. So if clients need to go into court, something that we can't right now, but we are able to give advice, and we are able to kind of help guide people where, agencies that might be able to help them if they do need to be legally represented. When the pandemic first started, we opened up our clinic in May, we saw a lot of issues with unemployment benefits, and people were, about to return to work, and they had concerns about making sure that they had accurate protective equipment, or we did have some people who didn't want to wear protective equipment. It was just all over the board. The other issue, and one of my colleagues is actually on attending as well, Wendy Vaughn, she's been very busy because she handles our domestic violence calls, and unfortunately those have been incredibly voluminous over the last 7 or 8 months. And so unfortunately that's something we're seeing. But even though none of us work in housing law, we realized that we had to become housing experts, because obviously we can't run a clinic that's devoted to responding to people's legal challenges during the pandemic and not address what's happening with evictions. So starting about a month ago, we began advising people on evictions as well. So this is a little bit of what the main thing that we've seen. We've seen people have a lot of confusion about the 2 moratoriums that are going on. Obviously the Illinois one, as many of you know, has been extended multiple times. You know, I'm anticipating it will be extended again, but I don't know that obviously for sure. But it essentially prevents evictions for people who cannot pay rent. It doesn't apply when a tenant has found to pose a direct threat to somebody, to the health or safety of other tenants, or is an immediate a severe risk to property, or a violation of building codes, or so there are some exceptions to it, but it's actually pretty broad. It actually, you know, protects quite a bit. But one thing that's been confusing is sometimes people will call up and say, well, does the moratorium erase the rent that I owe? And the answer to that is no, rent is still owed, but it just prevents a landlord from going to court for non-payment of rent to get somebody evicted. That being said, we are hearing from a lot of people that landlords are, I don't know if they're acting that they don't know this, or they're just, you know, still threatening evictions. And so we've been able to advise a lot of people about what to do if a landlord is saying that they're going to evict somebody or change their locks or things like that. The other moratorium is from the Centers for Disease Control. So there's the Illinois one, and then there's the Centers for Disease Control. The Illinois one is actually much broader, but the CDC one expires December 31st. But people who want protection under the moratorium have to actually go on the CDC's website and fill out a declaration. Well, I'll show you a little bit of it in a second, but the CDC moratorium is a little bit more narrow, and it's not quite as expansive as the Illinois one, but once again, very clear, back rent is still owed. Just because there's a moratorium, it doesn't erase anything. But if someone is interested in protections under the CDC moratorium, they have to certify to multiple things, that they've tried to obtain government assistance for renter housing. There are income limits, but someone's not able to pay full rent, wages, effort to make timely partial payments. So you can, it's more specific than the Illinois one that doesn't, you know, have any of these qualifications. But other things that the CDC is talking about is, if evicted, I'd likely become homeless. And that, once again, you understand that all rent is still very much due. If you are interested in our help for any legal advice or referrals, you know, for housing, we're really kind of focused on eviction counseling people about that. We're not really positioned to give advice about like security deposits or things like that. But what we can do is set you up with some places that can help you with that. So, you know, if there is something we can help you with, this is our phone number, this is our email address. We are happy to help out in any way we can. One caveat is we do follow, because we're part of a law school, we do follow the academic schedule. So we have a couple more weeks before the semester's over, and then we're going to be taking a little bit of a break where we're doing final things, but then we'll be today, and you know, we look forward to talking to you, help you out with something.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Colleen. And next up, we have Neil McMenamin from Hesed House. Neil?
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Neil McMenamin from Hesed House. I've been at Hesed for about 20 years. You know, from when I had started, you know, things have continued to grow. Just kind of give you a brief history. So back in, say, 1982, 1983, when homelessness was starting to develop in this form after deinstitutionalization. Some churches in the area got together because they were seeing individuals coming to their doors in need of shelter. And the first PADS was formed here in Aurora, 6 churches, one took 2 nights. And it started as that overnight shelter, seasonal shelter. Within a few years, those churches were seeing numbers that they couldn't fit into church pews or church basements. So they came together and Hesed House was formed. So this is the old Municipal Incinerator of Aurora that Hesed House is in. The overnight shelter supported by churches is definitely the beginning of PADS, but a daytime program started after that. Shortly after that, we had a transitional living community come in, very much family-based. Eventually, we grew a in-house case management program, which we call SEEDS. And then we kind of moved towards a model of partnering with organizations and bringing them on site. So like Colleen, who just kind of mentioned a little bit, the Northern Illinois University, their legal clinic works here with Aunt Martha's, which is a health clinic that's here, and they help us when we have an individual who should qualify for disability and they've hit some bumps in the road. So our case managers will refer them to the Aunt Martha's health clinic on site, and then they will connect them to the NIU legal clinic, and together we will all go forward and push for disability for individuals who should have that, need that income in order to get back into housing. We also have partnerships on site with Breaking Free for substance abuse counseling and AID for behavioral health, mental health counseling, and some other partnerships. But so we try to kind of create here a comprehensive resource center. So when we're working with individuals to stay here that might have 1, 2, or 3 issues going on, we can kind of bring a team together around them right in the same facility and help them move forward. That's kind of here on site through that part. A few years ago, we were working with City of Aurora, hospitals, service providers on a FUSE initiative in Aurora. So that is a FUSE initiative kind of focusing on those who we are all seeing in the service system, those with the most struggles. As we kind of move forward on that, we were able to start a project here at Hesed House called the Harbor. And right now it houses 12 of the most chronically homeless disabled individuals, in Aurora. So it has seen a really great success in helping stabilize people's lives, helping them to, people that have lived very chaotic lives, be able to live with some dignity. So we have that kind of on site. We also have a Lighthouse Program, which are permanent supportive housing units around the community. We have about 34 apartments in that program spread throughout the community. And we'll move individuals also that are in that chronically homeless, group, which is say homeless for more than a year or 4 episodes in 3 years of homelessness, and getting them into housing and then supporting them with permanent supportive services if needed to kind of help stabilize their lives and stabilize the community. Less people that are struggling under bridges or panhandling on a corner. So trying to help them find more dignity. So a couple other things going on. We have rapid rehousing dollars. So working with people in the shelter, individuals and families to try to help launch them back into independent housing and provide some supports and case management and slowly kind of weaning them off of that as they become independent. And then another key aspect is homeless prevention. So homeless prevention dollars. So kind of the idea of, in order to get the numbers of homeless down would be that idea of having less people come in through homeless prevention, rapidly rehousing people. So move people out faster, bring less people in, and we can make some headway. So that's kind of in general, Hesed House, what we're trying to do down here. a real quick, COVID and how it has affected us. It's affected us quite a bit. So earlier this year, we pretty much had to shut down pretty much all those ancillary services and partnerships. And actually, because of a few COVID cases, we moved the entire shelter to a hotel up in Schaumburg to kind of stem what could have been a worse outbreak. We had 3 cases and didn't develop anymore. So it did what it was supposed to do, but then came back here on lockdown and we weren't able to admit new people. So it was a difficult summer with people that we could not allow to come into shelter that hadn't stayed in the quarantine. But it is just what it is during these times. So we found other ways to try to serve those individuals. We grew a really big street outreach ministry, did everything we could to kind of move forward through that. So shelters, across the country, including us, no different. When we had to get the social distancing, we had to reduce capacity. So what kind of happened is our numbers that we could potentially serve had gone down. And we had to figure out a way, to get that capacity back up with the idea of being able to meet people's very basic needs. If you know where you're going to sleep, you can shave, you can wash your clothes, you can go to an interview. If you don't know where you're going to sleep and you can't do any of those other things, you can't go to a job interview. So the shelter, is that basis. So we need to get people back in off of the street and help them to have that first base taken care of, so they can move on to those engagement and counseling and working on different kind of issues, looking for employment, looking for housing. So we have funds now to expand and create a permanent shelter in the building across the street from us. Our capacity before, just in our adult shelter, was probably in the area of 215, 220. We're going to now be going from 165, which is our current, including family shelter, up more to about the 250 range. So we were about 250 when you threw family shelter in. So say within 2 months, we should be back to that kind of capacity in those programs. But definitely, COVID has, affected everybody here, especially the guests. We do have COVID testing, mass testing every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, you get to get the Q-tip thing going. So lots of fun going on over here. So kind of going then into the next piece, definitely what we're seeing and what we're worried about and trying to prepare for. Colleen kind of mentioned some of it there. Kind of nationally, National Alliance to End Homelessness has kind of put out that there's about 40 million renters in the country that are being protected by the moratorium. The idea of if it ends during the pandemic is projected to be the largest increase in homelessness in our country. Right now, across the country, as I had mentioned, shelter capacity is down, and now cold weather is here. So anything that led to a mass eviction in the next few months, would really be disastrous to the whole kind of system. Kind of then pulling it into Illinois, the Aspen Institute estimates that between 31% and 51% of Illinois renters are at risk of eviction, which impacts up to 1.7 million Illinoisans. So definitely, a lot of focus, on our end, and an advocacy needs to go towards homeless dollars. The idea kind of being, if we can't find a way to both help people catch up on rent and to help owners, who are also having to pay, their bills, and in essence, and in some situations aren't getting any rent whatsoever if somebody doesn't have that job and can't pay the income. So it's a two-way street. Through like stimulus and things like that, we need to figure out ways to marshal resources to help stem that tide. The other thing that we are seeing here too, and one of the things our case managers use is hot pads, looking for apartments. But what they're kind of seeing is, and talking to landlords we work with, is that there's less available right now. There isn't turnover, and with an eviction moratorium, that would kind of make sense. So we do have individuals that are trying to move out, and right now we can't find a fit for them. The other idea that they're seeing too is they're seeing rents tick up a little bit. So supply and demand, less supply. So they're kind of seeing those kind of issues. So no turnover, less apartments available. So definitely we need to do everything we can to help prevent people from coming into the system. I'm gonna, if I can do this, try to share my screen to just kind of show you two programs right now that are going on. Let's see. So this first one is, so Kane County has a homeless prevention program right now. Their funds have to be spent by December 30th of this year. So they only have about 7 more weeks to spend those funds. If you go to their website, you'll find this information, which gives you a very basic overview of who can apply. Then they have a link towards to their actual application. But the idea of their program, as well as our program, which I have just our base sheet on next, they can pay up to 6 months rent if you qualify and everything else is qualifying with the idea of, say, the eviction or the utility shutoff. You can show those types of things and how this one-time injection is going to help you catch back up. So the funds we have right now don't have to be spent or don't, go back if we don't spend them until June 30th. So definitely we're pushing people towards the county program first, as those funds will expire December 30th. So push people there first, and then, shoot for our website and our program. So send people to us. We're going to do everything we can, try to find as many resources as possible to help in this, but also on the advocacy end, looking at the idea of an understanding if someone is evicted, that eviction on their record it makes it very difficult for them to find an apartment, move into a new place. So needing to hold those off, on stability for families and housing, but also because it becomes a huge barrier to getting back into housing. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Neil. And I'm going to stop your screen sharing if that's okay. All right, perfect. Okay, and next we have the Neighborhood Project's Rick Guzman. Hi, Rick.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I just want to say thanks. This is a great panel. I'm a little biased because, I've been to a lot of AHA board meetings and had great experiences working there. I was working with the Human Relations Commission, as I was mentioning, with when both William and Susan came on board. I'm on the Hesed House board. I'm a graduate of NIU College of Law, and our family is a big user of the Aurora Public Library. We're those people that check out like 20 books at a time. So great to be with you all. Great to be with everybody else who's tuned in. The Neighbor Project, just really briefly, as we said in the introduction, we help people to reduce debt, build their credit, save money. And in many cases, we really push homeownership because it can be one of the ways to weather difficult times like this. So one of the things that the pandemic really brought into focus for us is that U.S. housing policy really does favor, in a significant way, homeownership and homeowners over renters many times. So that you see that in tax policy with just the huge amounts of tax breaks that are given for homeownership interest and other things. But even like with the Federal CARES Act and the protections that we saw come out, the answer, I think, for most homeowners was, if there were U.S. Or federally backed mortgages, forbearance was essentially a requirement where people could essentially say, hey, I'm struggling, so I'm just going to really easily access an option to just stop making my housing payments for a while. And then for the vast majority of people, the option was then they were able to just take those missed housing payments and tack them on to the end of their mortgage, so that it really does help people get through a difficult and really unprecedented time. But the response for renters was an eviction moratorium. And as Colleen and Neil and others have pointed out, an eviction moratorium is a very nice sort of immediate sort of way of kind of at least at minimum pushing the cliff that people might be seeing, like that they're about to fall off of, pushing it off and down the road. But in none of the state moratoriums, and certainly not the CDC moratorium, has there been really any any ability to do something similar, because you can't obviously push people's rent payments, in the same way off to 20 years down the road when a mortgage might become due or finish. So what we're seeing is an eviction moratorium that's really just sort of moving that cliff a little bit further out, but still keeping that cliff very much in front of people, because the moment these moratoriums expire, the rent will become due and people will be able to be evicted. And so we have shifted a little bit more of our focus towards helping renters in this situation, although we still, are trying to continue to find ways to promote homeownership, precisely because there are more protections that are available. There is more just built-in buffer, wealth and equity create that for people, and that's why we really focus on that. But another quick example, the state of Illinois, I think, was the largest rental assistance and mortgage assistance emergency program that they put in place using dollars that they got from the CARES Act, $300 million. And while they split it between renters and homeowners, they gave $5,000 in rent assistance to try to help get people caught up. But each eligible homeowner was able to access $15,000 of mortgage assistance. And that was even after, so many people, had already essentially gotten the assistance they needed by being able to move their missed payments to the end of their mortgage. And predictably, we saw nearly 3 times as many people apply for rent assistance than for mortgage assistance. And so the state also, in a way, really kind of, I think, favored homeowners by splitting the pot when the need was greater for renters, and by offering more assistance to homeowners than to renters. Now, the Neighbor Project was an official partner of the Illinois Housing Development Authority for that program. We continue to work with them on homeownership prevention and foreclosure prevention. So there's a variety of programs that we do to try to be able to help people in times like this. And one of the other ones, we work with both the city of Aurora and the state of Illinois on programs where we have essentially the ability to give forgivable loans, which are basically loans that turn into grants if you stay in your home, but to do home repairs. So one of the other ways that we're trying to help people through this pandemic, while people are struggling to keep up, to maintain home ownership, keep up with their payments, deal with wage loss, is that we have the ability and are currently working typically with several dozen families per year to be able to make significant home repairs in the form where we do the work, we get the contractors out there, we get the bids, and then we are able to do the primary things we do are helping people with replacing or repairing their roofs, with plumbing, electrical, big ticket things that can be difficult, and it's anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 that we're able to offer in forgivable loans that can become forgiven and essentially turn into grants. So that's another way that we're working now. But as I mentioned, we're working with more homeowners. We did do a rental assistance program on our own that worked with some local landlords to be able to try to help people. We're doing more of that as we look to 2021 and as these CARES Act funds are expiring. But our traditional focus has been on home ownership. That's what we've really tried to help people with, partly because home ownership can change somebody's situation. It increases their net worth or their wealth, even for lower income working families that don't have whose income may stay the same. If you go to our website, neighborproject.us, one of the things that we've been trying to talk about and trying to address is this nation's wealth gap. I think that, we're starting to hear a lot more about the wealth gap. I think in the sort of summer of racial reckoning, you started to hear more attention being put on that. Whereas previously, I think the income gap is what got more attention. And in the United States today, there is a huge income gap. With the typical median white family earning about 60% more than the typical Black family. But the wealth gap is really staggering. It is, rather than 60% more, it is typically about 900% more. The median white family has about 900% or 10 times as much wealth than the median Black family. And that's important because wealth really is a buffer for families, as I mentioned, when they face unexpected economic shocks like a loss of job or income, just a broken down car, health situations. And wealth is also the capital that's available to families to take advantage of economic opportunities and create stability. And so we have always, looked to how home ownership can be a part of building more community wealth and creating a more financially and strong community. And so we put out, though, to try to help people understand a little bit, we put out kind of a white paper, I guess, this summer that helps to trace when you kind of talk about fair housing, help to trace kind of our unfortunate history of discrimination. And it goes back, obviously, a long time ago. But those impacts are still felt today. So if you go onto the About Us page, you can download this brief history of U.S. housing policy and why homeownership can be such an important part of building wealth. The number of years of homeownership is the number one driver of this very large wealth gap in our community. And we kind of point to, and I won't go through it all, but if there's kind of a timeline from 1920 to 2020. And it goes through racially restricted covenants and how the FHA sanctioned that. It talks about, a lot of people are hearing more about redlining and how, again, the US government, that Federal Housing Authority, were behind actually drawing lines, red lines around neighborhoods where there was disincentives to invest in, or that the government wouldn't back loans in those areas. The GI Bill, which created an enormous amount of wealth and gave a great head start for returning vets, deservedly so, but almost no Black returning vets were able to take advantage of that program, and it gave an enormous head start. But then even more recently, the things that I think sometimes people don't always realize, the subprime lending boom, which happened just before the housing crisis of 2007, Blacks and Latinos were more than twice as likely to comparable whites, so same income, same situation, more than twice as likely just on the basis of race to receive subprime loans. And then what we saw was the median wealth after the housing crash happened. The median wealth fell by of Hispanic families fell by 66%. It fell by 53% among Black households, compared to just 16%, still a big deal, among white families. And we saw gains that had happened in the wealth gap completely evaporate. And today we have essentially the same gap in home ownership and the same level of home ownership among African-American families that we did in 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. And so a lot of the gains of the latter half of the last century were wiped away. And it's and so we believe, again, that there is so much about the lack of opportunity or the disparities that exist in our community today that are behind a lot of the anger, the distrust of institutions, like that we can kind of be a proactive part of trying to address. And one of the ways, the final thing that I'll mention here is that we are also partnering with the city of Aurora. We've just launched during the pandemic a financial empowerment center. And because one of the things we've learned is that it's not enough simply to offer homeownership programs if we want to address the wealth gap, even though it is a viable way of building wealth, but we need to start a little bit sooner. We need to offer more on-ramps to the pathway to homeownership. And so we're doing that through a financial empowerment center, which is doing virtual appointments at the moment, some socially distanced in-person appointments at the Thrive Center, which is located right by Hesed House and right by where NIU has their clinic, or usually has their clinic. And we're focusing on four things, and that is the underbanked population or unbanked population, Aurora, helping get people connected to free and full service banking as a part of creating financial stability. helping people to reduce debt and eliminate delinquent accounts, helping people to build their credit or establish credit, helping people to save. And it's free professional financial counseling that's being offered as a way. And we are, in the first 6 months, we've already essentially just about hit our entire year's goal for outcomes, the number of people that we're able to be helping with building their credit, reducing their debt, getting connected to banking and saving money. And so this is part of what we believe we can proactively be a part of, even during a pandemic, to be able to make some strides towards a more secure and more stable community. But as I said, that's our role in it, and the other organizations that are part of this panel. We couldn't do what we do if we didn't have places like the Housing Authority, Hesed House, the HRC, to be able to, and the NIU Clinic, to be able to refer folks to. So again, just really happy to be part of this great set of people who are doing great work in the city of Aurora and beyond.
Thank you so much, Rick. And thank you to everyone for all of the information you shared about your organizations and how you all have been able to pivot to increasingly challenging situation that we're in. So we do have a couple questions from the audience. And our first one, and I think I'll just, if everybody wants to pop back on, and we can do more of a casual conversation in response to these questions, that'd be great. The first one is, how can services, shopping and transportation be more accessible to public affordable housing? As management or ownership changes at housing, often so does decency and quality of living. What can be done? So Ralph, do you want to start? Or anyone? Oh, go ahead.
Can you ask that question again?
Yes, I can. It was kind of long. How can services, shopping, and transportation be more accessible to public affordable housing? As management or ownership changes at housing, often so does decency and quality of living. What can be done?
Okay. So for the Housing Authority, since I've been here, we've definitely tried to upgrade the level of housing, the cleanliness, the decency of housing. From a transportation standpoint, in the future, as we move forward to trying to do new development and things of that nature, we're looking at providing purchasing either vans or buses to provide transportation to our residents, and that's going to be in the future. But when you talk about decency of housing, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at modernizing all of our properties. We're talking about upgrading Indian Trail, which is on 400 Indian Trail right now. We talk about decency. Most of our properties have not been modernized since they were built in 1976, between 74 and 76. And so what we're really looking at is we put together a modernization plan and development plan to upgrade our properties. And so we just completed the RFP process to put in new roofs, siding at those properties. In the spring, we will begin to upgrade the interior of those properties, new kitchens, new bathrooms, new flooring, new closet doors, everything, even central air conditioning systems in those properties. So we're in that process now of upgrading our properties. We had to get out of the situation that we're in, and we have gotten out of that situation. So now we can move on to development, modernization, and at some point, as we begin to do new development, transportation is a part of our plan. It's definitely providing transportation. Just to mention one other thing, and I got so much stuff going on. We're applying for the Job Plus grant, which will assist our residents in finding jobs at all of our family sites. And so we have to find a way to provide transportation for that program. And so we're actually, the grant is due. The grant application is due December 1st. So we're hoping that we get the grant this year. If not, we're going to apply again next year. And during that process, we have to provide transportation to our residents to different sites for job training, education, or what have you. So we're definitely looking into that transportation part as being a part of our upgrading of our housing situation.
Great. Thanks, Ralph. Colleen. Oops. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat? I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And if you don't have anything to answer with, that's okay.
Okay.
But the question is, how can services like shopping and transportation be more acceptable, or I'm sorry, accessible to public/affordable housing?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add on that. Sorry.
I just wanted to check in and
I'm
make
not
sure.
sure.
Neil, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so just a thought on the second part of the question. And just kind of when we'll, walk with somebody and they end up in housing and say there is, landlord change or it eventually, is starting to be lacking in repair and whatnot. Definitely what we try to do is build relationships with those landlords, us as Hesed House, and we try to work with them and try to figure out how we can, help get done what needs to get done. And if we're participating in that, normally that will help changes happen. And then sometimes, it'll get to the point where I have to talk with the city if something becomes dangerous and we just can't get response from a landlord.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Rick?
Yeah, I'll chime in just on a couple of points too. Number one, I think that, like if we think about one of the more recent affordable housing projects or developments, I should say that was done in the community, it was completed, and the Housing Authority is a big partner with this, is the affordable senior housing at the former St. Charles Hospital. And one of the positive things there is just sort of, as we think, sometimes it's a lot more difficult to address and to react to problems that we've realized over time. But when we do new developments, that one was specifically placed in located and taking a building that was walkable to a lot of services in the downtown. It was right on a major bus route, and was able to have a stop right outside. It is walkable to the train station. And so, thinking about ways like that, it's a lot easier to kind of build it into the plan sometimes than to try to address maybe problems that have existed in some cases where we saw maybe some of these developments in the past intentionally located on the outskirts away from other parts of the community. And so I think that's one of the things we could do. But then, the pandemic really does present some significant challenges. One of the things that we, the Neighbor Project, have been wanting to do and have done to an extent is, we manage a very small amount of housing ourselves. And one of the things is that we kind of build services in with the housing. And right now, that's one of the things we would love to be partnering with more landlords, particularly as we've launched the Financial Empowerment Center that can be a service that helps connect people to other opportunities, resources, and then to just build financial stability that can lead to other types of opportunity. So our plan when we were developing it was to be able to be on site. We hoped, at the Housing Authority, for example, at some of their locations, or to be able to be on site at other apartment buildings and to offer on-site services. But as Ralph pointed out in his remarks, that face-to-face is the best way to reach people, but it's really difficult to do in the middle of a pandemic. And so some of this is just to say, let's, hopefully we as panelists and as leaders of organizations can kind of take some of the time, although we're occupied with just dealing with some of the crisis, but to sort of really plan and hopefully be prepared so that when we are able to be face-to-face again, we can address those. I mean, it's a great question. Of course it is, because it came from Marjorie Logman. And so I think she's a great community kind of watchdog to make sure that we're all staying on top of the things that we need to be. And so that's the kind of push that we need to be preparing for doing the things we know can make a difference once we're able to be back together again.
Yeah, definitely. And it sometimes seems like we have one more question and we're going a little over time. So we're going to keep on with the Q&A just for one more question, and then Susan will pop in and wrap it up, and we'll say good night. If you have to go, I get it. We do have this on recording. So, I mean, the attendees, hopefully the panelists can stay for a couple minutes. But if you gotta go and do dinner or whatever, this recording will be on the library YouTube channel and on our Facebook page, so you can follow up there. Our final question is kind of around that issue of equity that some of you addressed. And we know that sometimes, our pre-existing inequities in our culture can become exacerbated in times of crisis. So what suggestions do you have for individuals who want to make a difference and help to make unfair housing fair housing? And how can individuals and our organizations too, but how can we as a community do more to help this situation? And I'll start with Ralph again.
So for the Rural Housing Authority, as I mentioned earlier, our Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher waiting list has been closed since 2007. I have my own thoughts of why that was done, but I'm not letting that affect the way we're moving forward. And so by us opening up the waiting list, that'll give the people in Aurora, a couple of hundred more people, an opportunity to have affordable housing. On the other side of that, some of the ways that our preferences were set up in our public housing and our Housing Choice Voucher program, we're actually adjusting those to ensure that all people are eligible for housing. So just to give you an example, when I got here, a public housing resident at the Rural Housing Authority had 0% of a chance to receive a Housing Choice Voucher. And so we will be changing those preferences to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to receive a Housing Choice Voucher. So that's one of our major things that we're doing here at the agency. And when I say 200, it's a little bit over 200, but it's 200 plus our turnover amount, which is probably a 4 or 5 a month times 12. So we're talking about another 60 affordable housing opportunities for our tenants. So that's just kind of, that's our biggest thing. That's a big thing for us, is to open up this Section 8 wait list. So that's what we're really working on.
That's great. Thank you, Ralph. Colleen?
So I have an answer for this one.
Okay.
So a couple things. First of all, I think to just really kind of empower people to know what their rights are. We field calls from people who are so completely afraid that their landlord's about to come in and move out all their stuff, and just letting them know that legally cannot happen. If you have the absolute right to kind of help people know like what options are available to them. Neil talked a little bit earlier about how, like, when somebody has an eviction on their record, how hard it is to get housing. There's a whole there's an army of attorneys who are getting ready to help when the moratoriums are lifted, to help people negotiate with landlords, to say, is there a way that maybe I can't pay you everything, but I can pay you some of my back rent, and in agreement, we don't go to court and we just part ways, or whatever the negotiation would be, just a way that somebody avoids having an eviction. So that way, they can continue to get more easily than if they didn't. So that's going to be coming, and there are people who are, really getting ready to try to help people out with that. But I think another thing for trying to, make things a little bit more equitable is just also one thing our clinic has been helping people do is expunge and seal their records, because that prevents people from getting housing, even based on things on their records from years and years ago. And so I think the more that we can do to try to help people with that will help kind of close the gap.
Yeah, great points there, Colleen. Thank you. Neil.
One kind of thought is here at Hesed House, but in other places too, is building community. It's kind of education, relationship building, just kind of bringing people together and bringing them along, really is a way to help, moving forward. Making connections, being able to build relationships with landlords who will sometimes work with us when it's somebody like, oh, it's on the borderline. Would they rent to this person or not? And then we kind of, offer, hey, you know who we are, and we'll help and we'll smooth things out and work with you. But building those kind of relationships, building networks, where most of life is in the gray, it's not at the fringe. Either way, and really just building those relationships. For us, it's building them with the guests, then it's building them with landlords, it's building them with service providers, and it's just connecting and trying to just bring people together and make them almost a extended family, and just help people move forward.
Yes, thank you, Neil. I think Rick kind of talked about that at the end too, about how you all work together in several different ways and partnerships. So Rick, would you like to respond to that question?
Yeah, amen to everything that everybody has said. I'm super happy to hear, Ralph, about that policy change you're making. It's a really great step in terms of creating equal access to housing choice, which is important. And of course, the Housing Choice Voucher program also has some opportunities for people to be able to to not only choose where they can live, but we've talked in the past, and maybe 2021 will be the year, or 2022, where we can figure out ways where that can be a tool to actually help people take a step towards home ownership as well. And so all of our organizations, we partner together, we work together. Both, I know at least Hesed House and the Neighbor Project have volunteer tabs on our websites. It's a little bit more limited and more restrictions right now, but this isn't forever. And then, the big thing I will just, end with is, again, just referring people back to the panel and knowing what the resources are in the community. I would say that probably a lot of people didn't know that NIU had a COVID clinic, a legal clinic in Aurora, focusing on Aurora, right now during the pandemic, to look at the ways that, Hesed House isn't just a homeless shelter. They do so much more to service, really, more than 1,000 people a year that they're ending homelessness for every year, versus maybe the 150 to 200 people that they're sheltering on a given night. And so, and then I think I saw that Kathy Betcher from Prairie State Legal Services is on the line too. Prairie State Legal Services has been around in the Fox Valley area, offering some of those kind of ongoing housing related or discrimination, fair housing kind of related services, some of which Colleen mentioned that their clinic is not equipped to do. They've been doing it for years or decades. And so knowing that Prairie State is here, that NIU is investing in the community, and that we're all doing our best to work together to be a resource. And so knowing what resources are available in the community and to whom people can be referred is a big part of how people can be part of the solution.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Tonight, we're going to wrap up with some closing comments by Susan Bachmeyer, the Commissioner of the AHRC. Susan.
Hello, everyone. And we really appreciate your participation today at the Human Relations Commission. Our goal is to bring some support to the community, and we are volunteers commissioners appointed by the City of Aurora. And one of our goals is to, in cases of discrimination of any kind, and that's why we focus this night on housing, to please give us your complaints. You can find us on the website. You have 180 days to fill out a complaint in English or Spanish, Espanol, you can do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? So please reach out to us. Everybody has rights, and especially during this time. And again, thank you to the library for offering this opportunity. And we love the city, and we want to help our neighbors and that the city flourish. And there are more experts out there in housing too, but that didn't participate today, but we thank everyone in the community for these efforts. And thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Once again, thank you, Susan, and to William and all of our panelists this evening for providing this extremely timely and informative session to the community. All the attendees will receive a short survey immediately following the event. So please take a few moments to share your feedback and experience with us about tonight so we can better respond to our community's information needs and interest. And thank you to all the attendees tonight, and everyone, thanks for being here and have a great evening. Thanks.